The armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine is about to enter its third year, marking one of the longest, most costly, and tense periods in modern history. In your opinion, is Russia or Ukraine at fault in this conflict? And what do you think of the idea that the one who starts a war is not always at fault? October 2023 marked a devastating milestone in the Ukraine-Russia war, with Russian forces experiencing their highest ever daily casualty rate since the conflict began. An unprecedented average of 931 Russian troops were lost per day, breaking all previous records of military casualties in modern warfare. These staggering figures reveal only part of the narrative. Russian troop losses have exceeded all expectations, with thousands of soldiers killed and an alarming rate of equipment destruction. Analysis indicates that Russia's recent losses surpass even the heaviest casualties from the conflict's early phases, leading military experts to consider this a potential turning point in the prolonged confrontation. Record-breaking Russian casualties. We've analyzed the latest military intelligence reports showing unprecedented Russian casualties in recent months. Our examination reveals that November 2024 set a new record, with 2,030 Russian troops lost in a single day, marking the first time daily losses exceeded 2,000 since the conflict began. Looking at October's unprecedented daily loss rate, we observed Russian forces suffering approximately 1,500 casualties per day, which the UK's Chief of Defence Staff called an extraordinary price for minimal territorial gains. The total monthly toll reached 41,980 casualties in October, demonstrating the escalating intensity of the conflict. When one examines the total casualty statistics from the ongoing conflict, the figures reveal an alarming and tragic toll. Russian combat losses have escalated dramatically, with the cumulative number of total losses now reaching an estimated 738,660. Among these, independent verification confirms that at least 71,000 Russian soldiers have lost their lives. Furthermore, estimates suggest that by mid-2024, between 462,000 and 728,000 Russian personnel have been killed, injured, or captured during the hostilities. A closer analysis of the month-by-month data highlights an increasingly troubling trend for Russian forces. In November 2024, total casualties reached 45,680, averaging a staggering 1,523 casualties per day. This marks a significant increase compared to October 2024, which saw 41,980 total casualties, or an average of 1,354 per day. The daily average in November not only exceeded the figures from the preceding month, but also surpassed the previous daily records observed earlier in the conflict, including those recorded in September 2024. These statistics underline the intensifying human cost endured by Russian forces as the conflict continues unabated. This marks the fifth consecutive month of increasing Russian losses, with November becoming the costliest month of the entire conflict. These casualties surpass the combined Russian losses from all conflicts since World War II, including the wars in Afghanistan and Chechnya. The severity of these losses is further emphasized by Western intelligence assessments. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte confirmed that Russian casualties have exceeded 600,000, while British defense officials indicate the toll is approaching 700,000. These figures represent what military analysts, including our team, consider an unsustainable rate of losses, particularly given the minimal territorial gains achieved. Our analysis shows that Russia's current strategy of maintaining high-intensity operations, which began in October 2023, has led to this unprecedented casualty rate. The Russian military continues to push forward on multiple fronts despite these losses, suggesting a concerning disregard for troop preservation in pursuit of territorial objectives. Strategic cost vs. territorial gains. When examining the total casualty statistics alongside Russia's recent military operations, the numbers reveal a staggering reality that underscores the heavy costs of its campaign. A detailed analysis of Russia's territorial gains highlights a stark disparity between the ground achieved and the sacrifices endured. October 2024 marked a significant turning point, as Russian forces achieved their most substantial territorial advance since the summer of 2022, capturing over 160 square miles in the contested eastern Donbas region of Ukraine. A closer examination of the patterns in territorial acquisition reveals that Russia has concentrated much of its 2024 advances into the most recent months. Nearly half of the land seized this year was captured within the last quarter, reflecting an aggressive and highly focused operational push. In total, Russian forces have gained control of approximately 2,700 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory throughout 2024, a sharp contrast to the 465 square kilometers captured during the entirety of 2023. The advances have been especially pronounced in strategically significant areas that hold both tactical and symbolic importance. Among the notable developments, Russian forces have completed the encirclement of Selidov, a critical maneuver aimed at cutting off Ukrainian defensive positions. They have also managed to capture the fortress town of Vuhledar, a key stronghold whose fall has considerable implications for the broader conflict. In addition, their forces have made a 6-mile advancement north of Vuhledar within a single week, demonstrating the intensity and rapid pace of their operations in this sector. These territorial gains, while significant, come at an immense cost, reflected in the rising casualty figures and the broader toll of the ongoing war. Our examination of Russia's financial commitment reveals unprecedented defense spending. 2025 defense budget, 13.5 trillion rubles, $145 billion. Percentage of GDP, 6.3%, highest since the Cold War. Share of total budget, 32% of state expenditure. We've analyzed the cost-effectiveness ratio of these gains, finding that Russia's military spending will exceed social needs by more than double in 2025. The direct military costs, through 2024, are projected to reach $132 billion. An in-depth assessment of Russia's defense production capabilities reveals that the country continues to maintain significant manufacturing output, particularly in key areas of military hardware. Current data indicates that Russian factories are capable of producing approximately 1,500 tanks annually, along with 3,000 armored fighting vehicles each year. This robust level of production reflects a concerted effort by Russia to sustain its war effort and replenish losses incurred during prolonged military engagements. Despite these impressive figures, significant sustainability challenges emerge upon closer examination of the broader industrial landscape. While production remains high, the underlying capacity of Russia's defense industry faces growing constraints that could severely impact its ability to meet operational demands over time. Projections suggest that, at the current rate of attrition and replenishment, existing vehicle stocks may be fully depleted by 2026. This looming shortfall highlights a critical vulnerability in the long-term sustainability of Russia's military campaign. Moreover, significant gaps have been identified in artillery shell production, an essential component of sustained operations. Analysis of production targets for 152mm and 122mm shells reveals a striking disparity between what is required and what Russian industry is expected to deliver. For 152mm shells, a minimum of 4 million units is estimated to meet operational needs. However, current production capacity is anticipated to achieve only 1.3 million units annually. A similar shortfall is evident with 122mm shells, for which required production stands at 1.6 million units, yet the expected output is limited to 800,000 units per year. These discrepancies underline the strain on Russia's industrial base and raise serious questions about its ability to sustain high-intensity combat operations in the years ahead. These figures demonstrate a significant shortfall between military requirements and actual production capabilities. Despite these limitations, we've observed that Russia maintains a resilient military presence, with approximately 470,000 troops in occupied territories, indicating their commitment to sustaining operations despite the enormous costs. Military equipment destruction. In examining the latest battlefield reports, we've uncovered alarming evidence of Russia's military equipment destruction reaching unprecedented levels. Our analysis shows that October 2023 marked their highest equipment losses in 2 years, with 695 units destroyed, damaged, or captured. We've observed a dramatic shift in battlefield dynamics through drone warfare. Ukraine has expanded from just 7 domestic drone manufacturers to 80 manufacturers in 1 year, demonstrating their rapid adaptation. Our assessment shows these drones proving particularly effective against Russian supply lines and armor. The impact is evident in recent operations where Ukrainian forces used modified commercial drones costing just $1,000 per unit to conduct precision strikes. A comprehensive analysis of the ongoing conflict reveals the immense scale of Russian equipment losses, underscoring the extraordinary toll sustained by their forces. The month of October alone saw particularly devastating figures. with Russian forces losing 253 infantry fighting vehicles during this period. In addition, 103 tanks were either destroyed or captured within the same month, marking a significant blow to their armored capabilities. The losses also included 41 armored personnel carriers, further diminishing the operational effectiveness of their mechanized units. Cumulative data compiled through verified photographic and video evidence paints an even grimmer picture of Russia's overall equipment attrition since the beginning of the conflict. A staggering total of 3,639 tanks have been lost, with 2,571 confirmed as destroyed and 533 documented as captured by opposing forces. This loss of armored firepower significantly hampers Russia's ability to maintain dominance on the battlefield. Similarly, their artillery capabilities have been heavily impacted, with an extraordinary 21,151 artillery systems lost to destruction, capture, or abandonment. These losses reflect a severe degradation of their ability to conduct sustained long-range bombardments and support ground operations effectively. In addition to these setbacks, Russian forces have also endured the loss of 11,275 armored combat vehicles. This figure includes a wide range of essential assets critical to mobility, protection, and firepower, highlighting the significant erosion of their operational strength. The relentless pace of these losses underscores the immense challenges faced by Russian forces in maintaining their offensive capabilities amidst an increasingly resource-intensive conflict. An in-depth investigation into Russia's military logistics infrastructure has brought to light significant and potentially crippling weaknesses in its ability to sustain operations on the battlefield. Chief among these challenges is the severe strain on its maintenance and recovery capabilities, which are proving increasingly insufficient to meet the demands of an extended and resource-intensive conflict. It has been determined that within Russian military formations, there are typically only 2 recovery vehicles available, a glaring inadequacy for addressing the high number of damaged or inoperable vehicles in combat zones. Of these recovery vehicles, only one is equipped with the capacity to tow a tank, creating a critical bottleneck in the retrieval and repair process. Further analysis reveals that the logistical challenges extend beyond recovery limitations and include broader systemic issues within Russia's vehicle maintenance operations. A lack of proper and consistent maintenance schedules has resulted in many vehicles suffering from premature mechanical breakdowns, leaving units without the mobility and firepower necessary to sustain effective operations. This issue is compounded by Russia's limited repair capabilities, as its facilities and personnel are often overwhelmed by the sheer volume of equipment requiring attention. The logistical strain is exacerbated by the extended supply lines that Russian forces are forced to operate over, particularly in contested or geographically challenging areas. Long supply routes not only delay the delivery of essential parts and maintenance crews but also increase the likelihood of vehicles breaking down due to prolonged travel and harsh operating conditions. Finally, combat-induced mechanical failures, driven by intense engagements and sustained use under high-stress conditions, have further depleted Russia's already limited inventory of operational vehicles. The situation is particularly dire for their logistics network, which we've found is struggling to maintain efficient resupply operations beyond 30 to 40 miles from their bases. This limitation has forced Russian commanders to make difficult tactical decisions between abandoning damaged equipment or risking recovery operations. These losses have created what we're calling a cascading effect on Russian military capabilities. Their ability to sustain offensive operations has been significantly impacted, with many units operating at reduced strength due to equipment shortages. Internal military crisis. A deepening internal crisis within the Russian military structure, marked by leadership upheaval, widespread corruption, and deteriorating troop morale. An extensive investigation into Russia's military leadership has uncovered significant turmoil at the highest levels of command, highlighting both growing internal discord and systemic issues within the armed forces. Central to this upheaval is President Vladimir Putin's increasing dissatisfaction with his military leadership, which has resulted in a series of high-profile dismissals. The most notable of these is the removal of Sergei Shoigu from his position as defense minister, a role he had occupied since 2012. Shoigu's dismissal marks the end of an era in Russian military leadership and underscores Putin's apparent frustration with the conduct of the war. In a surprising and controversial move, Shoigu has been replaced by Andrei Belousov, a civilian economist with no prior military experience. This decision represents a stark departure from traditional military leadership approaches, suggesting that the Kremlin may be prioritizing financial oversight or strategic reorganization over battlefield expertise. Simultaneously, an unprecedented wave of corruption investigations has swept through Russia's military establishment, further destabilizing its leadership structure. Among the most prominent cases is the arrest of Deputy Defense Minister Timur Ivanov, who has been charged with bribery, a shocking development given his high-ranking position. Additional corruption scandals have implicated other senior officials, including 2 military officers charged with accepting $120,000 in bribes and Lieutenant General Vadim Shamarin, who has also been detained on bribery charges. Perhaps the most striking case involves Major General Denis Putilov, who has been arrested for allegedly accepting 140 million rubles, the equivalent of $1.5 million, in illicit payments. The scale of this corruption purge is extraordinary. At least 12 military officials have been arrested since April 2024, with the investigations casting a wide net over individuals who served under the leadership of former Defense Minister Shoigu. This pattern suggests that the purge may be tied to broader efforts to dismantle Shoigu's influence within the military hierarchy. The combination of leadership shakeups and corruption scandals paints a picture of a military establishment in disarray, grappling with internal conflict and a loss of institutional cohesion at a critical moment in its operational history. The analysis of troop morale highlights a profound and systemic deterioration that demands urgent attention. Numerous troubling issues have emerged, pointing to a crisis affecting the overall effectiveness and well-being of the forces. Reports indicate that soldiers are enduring inadequate medical care, with delays in the evacuation of the wounded causing severe repercussions. In one particularly alarming incident, these conditions have led to riots among wounded troops in Novosibirsk, underscoring the depth of the frustration and despair. Critical shortages of armored vehicles have exacerbated the situation, severely hindering casualty evacuation and leaving injured soldiers without timely support. Furthermore, the lack of essential equipment has forced many troops to procure their gear, including body armor, placing an additional financial burden on individuals already facing extreme hardship. This deficiency signals a profound failure in resource distribution and logistics. Extended deployments without relief have further strained morale, with some units being stationed in trenches for months on end. The lack of rotation or respite has left soldiers feeling isolated and abandoned, fostering a pervasive sense of disillusionment with their leadership. This sentiment is compounded by what many perceive as neglect from commanding officers, further eroding trust and cohesion within the ranks. Several key factors have been identified as contributors to this crisis. The strain on the medical system has resulted in significant delays in evacuating the wounded, leaving soldiers vulnerable and undermining their confidence in receiving adequate care. Equipment shortages have created a dire situation where troops must rely on personal funds to purchase critical protective gear. Command-related issues have deepened feelings of abandonment, while mismanagement of resources has limited access to vital assets such as military ambulances. The investigation shows that these internal challenges are creating a compounding effect on Russia's military effectiveness. The combination of leadership instability, widespread corruption, and deteriorating troop morale has led to what we're observing as a significant breakdown in unit cohesion. The Pentagon has confirmed these findings, noting that morale issues are directly impacting military effectiveness on the front lines. The situation appears particularly critical as we've found evidence of soldiers expressing open dissatisfaction with military leadership, including President Putin, Defense Minister Shoigu, and Chief of Staff Gerasimov. This internal discord represents what we believe to be the most serious crisis within the Russian military structure since the conflict began. Economic sustainability analysis. Our latest economic analysis reveals the massive financial burden of Russia's military campaign. We've tracked their defense spending reaching an unprecedented 32.5% of the total state budget, amounting to 13.5 trillion rubles, over $145 billion. An in-depth assessment of war expenditures reveals that Russia's military operations in Ukraine have resulted in staggering financial costs, estimated to amount to approximately $211 billion. This figure encompasses expenses related to equipment, troop deployment, and operational maintenance. The strain on Russia's economy is further exacerbated by a significant decline in arms exports, with over $10 billion in sales either cancelled or indefinitely postponed. Projections suggest that the long-term consequences of the war could be even more severe, potentially costing Russia an estimated $1.3 trillion in lost economic growth by 2026. Despite these immense financial pressures, the Russian defense industry has exhibited a notable degree of resilience, defying initial forecasts of collapse. Data indicates that their military production capabilities remain substantial. Annual manufacturing figures reveal the production of approximately 1,500 tanks and 3,000 armored fighting vehicles, while missile production has notably increased. What had previously been limited to the creation of 6 missiles per month has now expanded to maintain a stockpile of around 200 missiles at any given time. This adaptability highlights the strength of certain segments of their defense sector. However, significant vulnerabilities continue to undermine Russia's industrial base. A critical analysis of tank production reveals that 80% of output relies on refurbishing older vehicles rather than producing new models, reflecting limitations in raw materials and advanced manufacturing processes. Additionally, the rising cost of components, inflated by 30% as a result of international sanctions, presents a persistent challenge to the sustainability of production. These factors collectively point to a defense industry under strain, grappling with the dual pressures of maintaining output and adapting to external economic constraints. Further complicating the situation are alarming trends in resource depletion and production capacity. In the case of artillery shells, significant gaps exist between required production levels and actual manufacturing capabilities. For example, the military's annual demand for 152mm shells stands at 4 million units, while the current production capacity achieves only 1.3 million. Similarly, the demand for 122mm shells is 1.6 million annually, yet production falls short at just 800,000. These deficits highlight critical shortcomings in the supply chain and underscore the ongoing challenges faced by the Russian military in sustaining prolonged conflict. Our investigation reveals that Russia's industrial capacity will face severe constraints by 2025. The situation is particularly critical for ammunition production, where we've found that even with support from Belarus, Iran, and North Korea, Russia cannot meet its military demands. An in-depth analysis of Russia's current economic trajectory reveals a model that is becoming increasingly unsustainable under the strain of prolonged wartime expenditures. While official reports indicate GDP growth of 3.0% to 3.5% in 2023, closer examination shows that this apparent economic expansion is largely driven by artificially inflated wartime spending. The prioritization of defense production has introduced a range of destabilizing factors that raise significant concerns about the country's long-term economic health. One of the most striking consequences of this shift is the mass emigration of highly skilled workers. In the IT sector alone, approximately 100,000 professionals accounting for 10% of the workforce have left the country, depriving the economy of critical talent and innovation capacity. This brain drain poses a serious threat to industries reliant on technological development and digital infrastructure. At the same time, the rapid redirection of resources toward military needs has contributed to a marked deterioration in essential public services, with reports indicating that 70% of municipal infrastructure is now in poor or failing condition. This decline highlights the trade-offs being made at the expense of civilian welfare. The Central Bank of Russia has also issued warnings about the dangers of an overheating economy. The significant surge in military expenditures has led to inflationary pressures and inefficiencies, straining the nation's financial system and creating vulnerabilities that could be difficult to mitigate. Russia's continued ability to sustain its military spending hinges almost entirely on revenues from commodity exports, particularly energy sales. However, Western sanctions have significantly disrupted these revenue streams, raising production costs and limiting access to critical technologies necessary for resource extraction and refinement. These compounding factors suggest that Russia is on the brink of a severe economic crisis. The combination of heightened production costs, technological isolation, and resource depletion poses a formidable challenge to the country's ability to maintain its current level of military engagement in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. As the economic strain intensifies, the long-term sustainability of Russia's defense strategy appears increasingly precarious, with potentially far-reaching consequences for its domestic stability and global position. International response. The international community has mounted an unprecedented response to Russia's military campaign, with Western nations committing over $100 billion in military aid to Ukraine. We've observed that NATO and its allies account for 99% of all military assistance. The international community has mounted an unprecedented and coordinated response to Russia's military campaign in Ukraine, with Western nations collectively committing over $100 billion in military aid to bolster Ukraine's defense efforts. This extraordinary level of support underscores the determination of NATO and its allies, who together account for 99% of all military assistance provided to Ukraine. The scale and scope of these contributions reflect a historic shift in global military and diplomatic collaboration aimed at countering aggression. Significant commitments from key Western powers have defined this effort. The United States has emerged as the largest contributor, allocating an impressive USD 61.10 billion in military aid to Ukraine. Germany has pledged $11.40 billion, followed closely by the United Kingdom at $10.10 billion. Denmark has committed $7.00 billion, while the Netherlands has contributed $5.50 billion. These substantial allocations highlight the unity among NATO members and their shared resolve to support Ukraine's sovereignty and security. In a groundbreaking move, the European Union has, for the first time in its history, approved the supply of lethal weapons to a third country. Through the European Peace Facility, the EU has committed €5.6 billion, demonstrating a significant escalation in its approach to military assistance. Additionally, NATO members have collectively pledged approximately €800 million in non-lethal aid, including essential supplies such as cold weather clothing and medical equipment, which are vital for sustaining Ukrainian forces during harsh conditions and prolonged conflict. The diplomatic response to Russia's actions has been equally resolute. Western nations have strongly condemned Russia's invasion, with the United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly voting to denounce Moscow's aggression. The European Union has implemented 14 comprehensive packages of sanctions designed to exert maximum pressure on Russia. These sanctions aim to weaken Russia's economic foundation, restrict its access to critical technologies, and significantly curtail its military production capabilities. Further measures have included restrictions on Russian travel and visa facilitation, reinforcing the international community's unified stance against the invasion. This unprecedented military and diplomatic response highlights the extraordinary level of coordination among Western allies. The combined efforts not only aim to support Ukraine in its defense, but also seek to isolate and constrain Russia economically and technologically, with the ultimate goal of curbing its capacity to sustain military aggression. Recent analysis has identified the emergence of several new military coalitions dedicated to enhancing Ukraine's defense capabilities in the face of ongoing aggression. Among these, the United States has taken a leadership role in establishing a coalition focused on bolstering Ukraine's air force. Denmark and the Netherlands have joined this effort, specifically committing to provide F-16 fighter jets, a significant step in strengthening Ukraine's aerial defense and offensive capabilities. Furthermore, allied nations have collectively agreed to launch NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine, NATO. This initiative, staffed by 700 personnel from NATO member states and partner nations, is designed to provide essential training and logistical support to Ukrainian forces, ensuring a sustainable and long-term enhancement of their operational readiness. In addition to this overarching coalition, specialized groups have been formed to address Ukraine's specific needs. Estonia and Luxembourg have taken the lead in improving Ukraine's IT infrastructure, a critical element for modern military coordination. Lithuania has spearheaded efforts to neutralize mines, mitigating the risks posed by unexploded ordnance and ensuring safer conditions for both military operations and civilian life. Several nations have also aligned to strengthen Ukraine's air defense systems, providing a coordinated response to aerial threats. The commitment of Ukraine's allies extends far beyond immediate military aid. NATO member states have pledged a minimum baseline funding of €40 billion for Ukraine within the next year, signaling a long-term dedication to its defense and recovery. In a significant political development, NATO has also elevated its ties with Ukraine by establishing the NATO-Ukraine Council. This forum places Ukraine on equal footing with NATO members, fostering deeper collaboration and ensuring Ukraine's voice is heard in alliance decision-making. Western support has also included comprehensive training programs designed to enhance the skills and effectiveness of Ukrainian forces. One notable example is the United Kingdom's Operation Interflex, which has already trained over 30,000 Ukrainian personnel. The program's ambitious goals include training an additional 10,000 personnel by mid-2024, further bolstering Ukraine's capacity to defend its sovereignty. The strength of this coalition is reflected in its unified and multifaceted approach. NATO members and partner nations are not only providing military assistance but are also working to hold perpetrators of war crimes accountable. Additionally, they are supporting international efforts to enable Ukrainian grain exports, a crucial initiative aimed at addressing the global food crisis exacerbated by the conflict. This unprecedented level of coordination represents the largest international coalition formed to support a single nation in recent history. The alignment of military, political, and humanitarian efforts underscores the collective determination of Ukraine's allies to ensure its defense uphold international law, and mitigate the broader impacts of the war. Ukrainian tactical advantages. An in-depth examination of Ukraine's military capabilities reveals a series of remarkable tactical advancements that have significantly shifted the balance of power in its ongoing conflict with Russia. One of the most striking developments is Ukraine's transformation in drone production capacity. Within just 1 year, the country has expanded from a modest base of 7 domestic drone manufacturers to an impressive 80, demonstrating an extraordinary level of industrial adaptation and innovation under the pressures of war. This rapid scaling underscores Ukraine's ability to pivot strategically, leveraging its industrial and technological resources to meet emerging battlefield needs. Ukraine's evolution in drone warfare has provided a critical edge in the conflict, enabling its forces to disrupt Russian advances effectively. The deployment of a diverse range of remotely piloted aircraft has proven instrumental in carrying out precision strikes against high-value targets, often at a fraction of the cost associated with traditional military hardware. Analysis indicates that Ukrainian forces have been using drones costing as little as USD 1,000 per unit to inflict significant damage, underscoring the cost-effectiveness of their approach. The government's ambitious plan to produce 1 million FPV drones in 2024 reflects a clear commitment to maintaining and expanding this advantage. This tactical superiority in drone warfare has been bolstered by Ukraine's innovative use of commercial technology and its ability to rapidly implement field modifications based on real-time combat feedback. The integration of counter-electronic warfare capabilities further enhances their operational effectiveness, while the establishment of specialized drone units within brigades ensures that these systems are seamlessly incorporated into broader military strategies. Ukraine's strategic defense innovations extend beyond drone warfare to include sophisticated advancements in electronic warfare, EW, and integrated defense systems. The development and deployment of the Delta system have been particularly impactful. This advanced digital command and control platform has played a pivotal role in orchestrating the defense of Kyiv, supporting counter-offensives in Kharkiv, and coordinating the sinking of the Russian cruiser Moskva. The system's ability to provide real-time situational awareness and precise targeting data has made it a cornerstone of Ukraine's modern warfare strategy. Naval innovations further highlight Ukraine's growing military sophistication. The effectiveness of its naval drone program has been demonstrated in successful strikes on key Russian vessels, including the cruise missile carrier Bayan and the patrol ship Pavel Dursovan. The Sea Baby series of partially submerged attack drones has been particularly noteworthy, consistently breaching Russian naval defenses and showcasing the ingenuity of Ukraine's maritime tactics. Ukraine's counter-offensive strategies reflect an adaptive and integrated approach to modern combat. Reconnaissance drones provide real-time battlefield awareness, enabling precise artillery coordination and enhancing the effectiveness of strikes. The use of electronic warfare systems disrupts Russian communications and operations, while AI-enabled technologies improve target identification and strategic decision-making. An investigation into Ukraine's military strategies reveals that Ukrainian forces have successfully neutralized Russia's initial advantage in air superiority. This achievement is largely attributed to their rapid development and deployment of advanced drone technologies, which consistently outmaneuver Russian air defenses. The use of smaller, more numerous drones has proven particularly effective, enhancing battlespace awareness and enabling precision strikes on critical targets. Ukraine's innovative approach to sustaining its drone capabilities has been bolstered by a strategic integration of public-private partnerships. Domestic companies have repurposed significant portions of Ukraine's economy to establish a robust supply chain for drone production. This adaptation has allowed Ukrainian forces to maintain tactical superiority, even while contending with a numerically superior adversary. The collaboration between the government and private sector demonstrates a high degree of resilience and ingenuity in responding to the demands of modern warfare. The effectiveness of Ukraine's counter-offensive capabilities is further demonstrated by its ability to strike deep into Russian territory. Long-range drone operations have successfully reached targets as far as 800 kilometers behind enemy lines, showcasing Ukraine's capacity to project power and disrupt Russian logistical networks. These deep strikes not only impede the enemy's ability to sustain its operations, but also highlight Ukraine's expanding strategic reach. Ukraine's tactical advantages are underpinned by its remarkable ability to adapt and innovate in real time. Their development of AI-guided drones capable of operating effectively under Russian jamming attempts exemplifies this technological edge. Additionally, Ukraine's proficiency in crowdsourcing and rapidly modifying commercial technology has created a sustainable military advantage. These advancements, combined with the nation's commitment to integrating innovation into its military strategy, continue to define its approach to overcoming the challenges of this conflict. Future implications. Based on our comprehensive analysis of military intelligence reports, we've identified critical turning points ahead in the Ukraine-Russia war. Our research indicates that Russian forces will likely reach their peak operational capacity by late 2024, followed by increasing material challenges throughout 2025. We've conducted a detailed evaluation of Russia's current military position, finding they maintain 470,000 troops in occupied territories. However, our analysis reveals concerning trends in their sustainability. Artillery shell production falling significantly short of requirements. While 152mm shells, only 1.3 million produced versus 4 million needed. While 122mm shells, production of 800,000 versus 1.6 million required. We've observed that Russia's industrial capacity faces severe constraints, with vehicle stocks expected to be depleted by 2026. Our assessment shows their defense industry has significantly mobilized, increasing shifts and expanding production lines, but faces critical limitations in longevity and reliability. An analysis of Russia's strategic options in its ongoing conflict with Ukraine reveals a structured three-stage plan aimed at achieving long-term objectives. The first stage focuses on maintaining sustained pressure along the Ukrainian front to deplete Ukrainian munitions, personnel, and overall combat capacity. This attritional strategy is designed to weaken Ukraine's ability to resist over time. The second stage seeks to limit the flow of international military aid to Ukraine by leveraging diplomatic and economic pressure on key Western nations. Finally, the third stage envisions launching offensive operations once Ukrainian resources are sufficiently depleted, enabling Russia to exploit its remaining advantages. This strategy appears to be calibrated for a planning horizon that extends to 2026, forming the basis for Russian efforts in force generation and industrial output expansion. However, our analysis indicates that this timeline may be overly optimistic given the significant resource constraints and logistical challenges Russia currently faces. The feasibility of sustaining such a protracted strategy remains in question. In evaluating the trajectory of the conflict, several potential scenarios have emerged as plausible outcomes. The first scenario envisions a prolonged war characterized by a grinding, attritional conflict that tests the endurance of both sides. This scenario is assessed as highly likely, given the current trajectories of military engagements and resource allocations. A second potential outcome is a frozen conflict, in which the front lines stabilize and neither side achieves a decisive breakthrough. This scenario is moderately likely and hinges on the exhaustion of resources on both sides and the absence of decisive international intervention. A third scenario, involving a clear Ukrainian victory, would require a significant shift in Western policies to increase military aid and ensure consistent support for Ukraine's armed forces. While this outcome is strategically desirable for Ukraine, it is currently assessed as having a low probability, given the existing limitations in aid delivery and the unpredictable cohesion of the Western coalition. Conversely, a scenario leading to Ukraine's defeat characterized by the acceptance of Russian-imposed terms and territorial losses is assessed as moderately likely if Western support wanes or if Ukraine's resource constraints become insurmountable. The likelihood of each scenario depends on several critical factors that will shape the course of the conflict. The level and consistency of Western support play a pivotal role, particularly amid growing uncertainties surrounding U.S. aid and the production capacities of European defense industries. The cohesion of the international coalition backing Ukraine is another key determinant, as any fractures could undermine collective efforts to sustain Ukraine's defense. Russia's industrial capacity also represents a crucial factor. Despite efforts to ramp up production, Russian manufacturing capabilities are hampered by sanctions, supply chain disruptions, and restricted access to advanced technologies. These limitations constrain Russia's ability to replenish critical resources, potentially weakening its ability to sustain offensive operations in the long term. Our assessment indicates that Russia's theory of victory remains viable only if Ukraine's international partners fail to adequately resource and support its military forces. Should Ukraine's allies maintain consistent levels of ammunition supplies, advanced training programs, and overall support through 2024, it becomes increasingly unlikely that Russia will achieve meaningful gains by 2025. The balance of the conflict will ultimately depend on the alignment of these strategic factors and the decisions made by key stakeholders in the months and years ahead. Russian military power faces unprecedented deterioration as record-breaking casualties, equipment losses, and internal crises converge. Our analysis reveals their current trajectory points toward systemic collapse, with daily losses exceeding 931 troops and critical ammunition shortfalls reaching dangerous levels. Military production capabilities show alarming gaps between requirements and actual output. Russia's defense industry struggles to meet basic needs, producing only 1.3 million artillery shells against a 4 million requirement. Their economic model, heavily tilted toward military spending at 32.5% of the state budget, proves increasingly unsustainable. Ukraine's remarkable adaptation, particularly in drone warfare technology, combined with strong international support, creates significant advantages. Their expansion from 7 to 80 domestic drone manufacturers demonstrates impressive industrial agility that consistently outpaces Russian countermeasures. We project Russia will reach peak operational capacity by late 2024, followed by an accelerating decline through 2020-2026. Their ability to maintain effective combat operations will largely depend on Western support for Ukraine, which remains the decisive factor in determining the conflict's outcome. Russia's prospects for military success diminish significantly as equipment stocks deplete and production limitations become more apparent. Do you think Russia will continue to have the same advantage over Ukraine as it did at the start of the conflict in 2022, with its military significantly reduced as equipment stocks are depleted and production constraints become more apparent? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next videos.